Welcome, everybody, and it's good to see you here online and in the chamber. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of December. If you're watching online, either just now or at some future point, welcome to anybody who may be doing so. It's really good to have you there. And I hope you find the agenda interesting today. We've got two main agenda items. The first one on the economy, employment and skills, and the second one on potholes and road conditions. And believe you me, there are connections between those two reports, but we'll probably find them coming through as we go through. The first is a report. The second one will be a presentation of the from the Council's officer who leads in these matters. So we're going to start with apologies for absence, and I believe we have one apology for absence, Robert.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Bond, Chair.
Thank you. And any declarations of interest? I don't think we have any declarations of interest to note. So we're going to move on to the item 3, which is the report on economy, employment and skills strategy action plan update. And it's a really interesting report. We're grateful for the work and the detail that's gone into it, and we welcome in front of us here in the chamber officers who are going to take accountability for every word written in this report. But it's very good to see you here, and that's James Woodcock and Hannah Jones. So I don't know how you'd like to lead into this, but Hannah, did you want to start by introducing the report and perhaps picking out some of the key areas? And we will then move into questions, but I'll hand over to you now, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity this morning. My name's Hannah Jones, Head of Economy, Employment Skills at Monmouthshire County Council. We're here this morning, as the Chair said, to present our Economy, Employment and Skills Strategy Action Plan Progress Update, which is a long title, I do apologise. So it's to provide the committee with an update. As you're aware, the strategy was approved by Cabinet back in February 2024. The strategy has an action plan which we monitor on a quarterly basis. It's important we bring it back here to share with you the highlights and the areas of development. Within the strategy, you'll see there's 4 key themes: place, people, enterprise and infrastructure, and there are a number of objectives. I wanted to bring your attention when we were looking at building the strategy, and it seems absolutely ages ago now, we looked at other strategies across the authority, and it was important that our strategy knits into those strategies. So you'll see in the report they are listed, and as time has progressed, those strategies have gone from development into approval stage. I wanted to draw your attention to some background information contained in the report and in the accompanying document. I wanted to speak about Monmouthshire. Our economy is high value, high skilled, diverse and resilient economy, working to full capacity, attracting investment and our strong entrepreneurial culture. Monmouthshire positions itself second in the most competitive economy in Wales, and ranks well in terms of the UK Competitive Index. We're key contributor, I can't get my words out this morning, to apologise, to future economic growth of the Cardiff capital region. We are a bordering county and the gateway to Wales. I wanted to draw your attention in terms of the community and corporate plan, where it recognises that Monmouthshire has a strong, diverse economy and well placed for growth. Employment rates are high, and as our qualification levels. The vision in the strategy, and it still stands, is to foster a diverse, fairer, greener and circular economy, generating sustainable employment growth and creating conditions for shared prosperity. Within the cover report, you'll see the objectives outlined, which we'll go into a bit detail later with the paper. Before we go into sort of each of the themes, I'm going to hand to my colleague James, who's, as you'll see within the accompanying paper document, there's some key statistics we wanted to share with you this morning, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, please do.
Thank you, Chair. I'm James Woodcock, Business Insights Manager within the Economy, Employment and Skills team. So we thought this would be helpful just to give us a snapshot or an overview of the Monmouthshire economy. We've currently got 65% of residents employed within the county, although everyone will be aware that there's quite a lot of movement of people in and out of the county. So around 17,000 commuting out and 14,000 commuting into the area. And of those commuting out, around 27% were going to the city of Bristol. Levels of economic activity are high. It's just under 80%, which is level with the position in March 2022, and that's the highest rate in the Cardiff City region. And we've got high levels of employment within that as well, with 2.8% of people who are economically active unemployed, I beg your pardon. So it's 2.8% of those who are economically active are unemployed, so the remainder are in employment. And that's the equal lowest rate in Wales alongside Paris. Self-employment rates stand at 11.6%. And the total number of enterprises in Monmouthshire is just over 4,500 businesses. When you look at that per 10,000 population within the county, we have 773 businesses per 10,000. And that's the highest in Wales and above the average for Great Britain. Thinking about the survival of those businesses, 60.3% of businesses in Monmouthshire were still active 3 years after they started, which is above the UK rate and the Wales rate. Earnings will be something that I know is in the minds of many. We do caveat this data in the sense that it's based on a 1% sample of employees, so there's a limit to how much weight we can put on this data, and you can see variations from year to year. But for resident workers, so those Monmouthshire residents, earnings increased, that's average earnings increased from about £732 a week gross in 2022 to just under £812 in 2025. That ranks us highest by county in Wales and above the GB average. I think the one thing to highlight within that, it does emphasise the gap between full-time male workers that reside in Monmouthshire and female workers. So there's £171 a week gap based on that data. Earnings by workplace, for both genders, the figure is £642 a week in 2022, which has risen to £773 in 2025. Not such a noticeable gap there in terms of workplace earnings between male and female workers. That data is derived from the UK government's annual survey of hours and earnings. So it's, as I say, it is based on a 1% sample. So we do need to exercise caution in terms of drawing conclusions from that data, really. Alongside that, we're obviously mindful of people living in deprivation, and the latest data, available data, which is for 22-23, indicates that 8% of people living in households in Monmouthshire experience material deprivation. So that's an overview of some of the data available on the local economy.
Thank you, James. We're going to go into talk through the strategic assessment information under each of the themes, myself and James. So we're going to do it between us. What I wanted to share really, and I didn't say, I do apologise, this is very much shared responsibility across the authority. When we were looking to shape the strategy, we commissioned some research through Litchfields to enable us to look at our evidence as an economy and a comparative in the region. And it was very much shaped by officers and engagement with businesses to where we are and how we've progressed. So looking at the theme of place, I just wanted to highlight to the committee This is around our economic identity and competitiveness, our town centre vitality, our environmental transition, our rural diversification and our tourism. You'll see within the paper we've highlighted where we've supported marketing campaigns for Mon Space, Monmouthshire County Council Flexible Workspace offer at Castlegate. You'll see in the report there's some statistics for town centre footfall in each of our town centres and reference to the development of our placemaking plans. From this theme, our highlights are we've worked with partners, as I said, around stakeholders in developing placemaking plans. We continue to assist the tourism and promote events and attractions in the county. The destination management plan has recently been approved by Cabinet. We've held a number of events in the county, included Armed Forces Day in Caldicot Castle. Our heritage assets are highlighted here, and we had the tour of Britain also. Areas for development we wish to take forward under this theme are we continue to promote Monmouthshire's competitive and diverse location for businesses and developing our economic identity and developing a town-based forum which will bring together local businesses with local councils to shape placemaking and business opportunities in the town, including addressing vacancy rates. If I briefly then go into the people theme, the people theme focuses on equipping our residents to thrive in our changing economy, supporting skills development, education partnerships, supporting job creation, and contribute to wider efforts to shape the county's demographic profile. In looking at skills and employment progression, we've seen a number of our residents engage in skills qualifications. We've supported a number of our residents into employment. We're currently piloting a programme with local job centres. As you're probably aware, there's been an increase in young people 18 to 24 in unemployment. So we're piloting, we're on our second programme with DWP, supporting young people with barriers into work, which has been really successful. We were looking at our skills analysis, we've engaged with 2 training providers outside of the authority, looking to explore a skills centre in Monmouthshire, and through that we've engaged with 6 of our major employers to consider what our skills priorities are going forward. In this area, we talk around our education collaboration. I wanted to highlight that we've got a level 2 pathway to employment in childcare, currently in King Henry School with 5 students, which is really successful. So supporting those young people who perhaps wouldn't have been able to make the transition to college could possibly become NEET. Also, we've got our STEMS programme, which we launched back in July. Working in our primary and secondary schools, we had some investment from Welsh Government for some capital equipment, and that is embedded across the curriculums. Picking up on job creation and demographic change in terms of allocating employment land and promoting available sites, which is underpinned in the replacement local development plan. There's some stats there in terms of 24-25, 108 affordable and 74 marketed homes were approved, helping younger residents live and work locally. And the replacement local development plan will deliver 1,000 affordable houses at pace and scale over the next planned period. So the highlights we've picked on, I've talked about in terms of the replacement local development plan, our STEM project, and supporting our residents in gaining employment. Areas we'd like to take forward is to establish a local skills task group to link to the regional skills partnership in terms of coordinating delivery, reduce duplication, and ensuring that we are meeting employers' needs. We will be commencing a Connect to Work programme funded through Department of Work and Pensions. Cardiff City is the lead authority, and this is supporting an individual with health barriers and disabilities into meaningful paid employment. As I said earlier, we will be looking to go from exploratory stage into discovery stage and looking at a skills centre for the authority. I've just wanted to highlight as well that there's been significant increase in number of young people not in education, training and employment. I know this is referenced in the corporate self-assessment as well. And we wish to analyse the reasons for this and look at ways how we can reduce this going forward in terms of our provision. I'm going to hand over to James now. He's going to talk through the enterprise and infrastructure.
Thank you, Hannah. So the enterprise theme covers 7 objectives, including supporting the growth of existing businesses and our larger businesses, identifying opportunities around regional growth sectors, increasing uptake of support for people wishing to start or grow a business, fostering our entrepreneurial culture, encouraging innovation and clustering, increasing the accessibility of public procurement, and fostering a thriving local food economy. And the economy employment skills team is directly responsible for 5 of those objectives and supports on the other 2 identified there. In terms of supporting business growth and enabling people to start their own businesses, we supported 59 pre-start and existing businesses in 24-25 and have already approaching that number in the first half of the current year. So we've seen a steady increase in engagement, and our new customer relationship management system has meant that we can raise awareness of the services we offer, engage more effectively with businesses, and track the support we're providing to those businesses. We're clearly working closely with Cardiff City Region and the Marches Forward Partnership to develop strategic approaches and also identify opportunities relating to emerging sectors. And as I've alluded to, we've increased the uptake of business support through the increasing capacity we have within the team and also access to the customer relationship management system. And have worked closely throughout with those interested in developing a business to help them take that forward and understand the issues and considerations they need to take into account when doing that. We referenced in that section having helped 49 residents progress towards self-employment and support the launch of 3 new businesses. The information does take some time to come through from those people that we've supported sometime. Currently, we're revisiting that data, and it's likely to be approaching 10 businesses that we've seen as a result of that support. Other areas we've been involved into, including encouraging innovation and clustering. We work closely with a range of partner organisations through the partnership that we run, and the food partnership team has been involved in developing 2 farming clusters, working with partner organisations. During the life of the strategy, we've seen procurement systems updated to improve access for local businesses to procurement opportunities, with just under £11.2 million in local spend, and a responsible procurement policy in development. In terms of the milestones and highlights, we've supported a number of events during the last 2 years, really, including a graduate breakfast to promote a venture graduate programme. We've engaged with business in relation to the development of the replacement local development plan and delivered an event for women either interested in entrepreneurship or already involved in running businesses. Alongside that, there was the Marches Real Food and Farming Convergence, which was delivered in autumn of this year, just outside Monmouth, working with partners from the Marches Forward Partnership. And colleagues in our food team have worked with local farmers as part of a pilot scheme on Welsh vegetables in schools to bring more local produce into schools. And that's enabled pupils in 10 participating schools to benefit from nutritious local food. In terms of areas for development under that theme, through our networks, we'll be looking to ensure that Monmouthshire can derive maximum benefit from regional growth opportunities. Turning then to infrastructure, excuse me, I'll just pause for a drink. So in terms of infrastructure, we have 5 objectives around informing the use of employment land and premises, exploring the role that Monmouthshire County Council can play in the development of floor space, improvements in digital connectivity, developing a sustainable transport system that also contributes to our economic ambitions, and attracting investment from larger, high-value enterprises. Infrastructure is clearly a key part of Monmouthshire's economic growth, and our economy team leads on attracting investment and supporting work around employment land and premises. Digital connectivity and transport are led by other teams, but are obviously really important parts of the economic landscape. In terms of inward investment, we're continuing to develop our approach to attracting larger, high-value businesses and supporting dialogue internally at a strategic level and coordinating that. And we do work closely with Welsh Government and Cardiff Capital Region to identify and pursue opportunities for growth. In terms of employment land and premises, clearly the Deposit Local Development Plan allocates land for job and growth and monitors supply and take-up. Continues to be ongoing, really. Our role includes ensuring business needs are reflected in land use planning and promoting available space to support the creation of new jobs. And we do work closely with our estates team to promote sites and premises that are within MCC's ownership and support the asset management strategy. Improvements in digital connectivity are helping to create a more connected and accessible Monmouthshire, but there are still premises that don't have access to superfast broadband of 30 megabytes per second or more and are not included in any delivery plans. However, in June this year, the Welsh Government announced a new £70 million high-speed broadband project, which aims to provide fast and reliable broadband to around 25 to 30,000 premises. And it's hoped that that will help address the remaining connectivity gaps in our rural areas. And finally, in terms of the assessment, Monmouthshire's local transport strategy sets out a sustainable and inclusive vision for improving transport across the county and feeds into the regional transport plan and its delivery and aligns with national and local priorities. Milestones in relation to infrastructure. We've been involved in working with the estates team to enable all 9 council-managed suites in the MonSpace Flexi Space at Castlegate Business Park to be fully occupied. And also looking at opportunities to develop similar facilities in other parts of the county. They've also been involved in letting of industrial units and on the farm through the estates team. I've mentioned the local transport strategy that was adopted in May 2024, which will feed into the regional transport plan. And we've secured significant funding to implement transport projects to enhance access, safety and infrastructure, including significant investment in active travel, including the Llanfoes to Castle Meadows active travel bridge. And also £5 million from UK government for the Chepstow Levelling Up scheme, of which the Chepstow Transport Hub is a key part. And just to reference, Appendix 2 of the report provides some additional context around the data that I shared earlier. So it gives an indication of how we sit relative to other counties in Wales and also against Great Britain and the Welsh average. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks, James, for that summary. And I know members of the committee have read the report, and I've got some questions to ask. So I'm going to open it to questions now. And I see. Welcome, by the way, Councillor Griffiths. I noticed you've got your hand up, but I'm going to take committee members first, if I may. Or did you want to speak, Councillor Griffiths, to this? You're on mute just now, Councillor.
I'm happy for Councillor Griffiths to go before me. It's not a problem.
You're on mute. You were on mute. Do you want to try again?
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I'm sorry I'm not with you in the chamber this morning. I've got a meeting with Caldicott Town Council following this, and I thank Hannah and James for the report and the introduction, which I hope will allow a full discussion in committee. In terms of adding to the introduction, the only thing I'd like to add is to stress perhaps the conclusion from the original baseline study of Monmouthshire County Council, that we're an economy which is distinguished by our diversity. We're probably known for the fact that we have an agricultural sector, we have a food processing sector, we have an important hospitality sector, and our town centres are key parts of our economy. But that stands alongside, and I think what is often unrecognised is that we have a very significant manufacturing and advanced manufacturing sector. When you acknowledge that we've got the second biggest brewery in Europe within our county, when you look at our range of medical technology firms, our digital technology firms, our construction technology firms, they're all to be celebrated, all to be understood as major contributors to our economy. They relate to the work that we do on our town centres, our hospitality sector. I often consider that when we succeed in having attractive, vibrant towns, they become the magnet that attracts investors in a broader range of activity within the county. So they don't, in any sense, compete with each other, they interrelate with each other in developing that strength in our diversity. What we also learned from the baseline study is that we are working at full capacity. As James said, our unemployment rate is, I believe, the lowest in Wales, low across the UK at around 2.8%. And it's very important that we work to develop that labour supply, if you like. The work that we do on NEETs, the work that we're doing with 18 to 24-year-olds, to ensure that they, as much as possible, engage with the economy, I think is very important. And Hannah mentioned the ambition, which is as strong as ever, that we develop opportunities for skill development within the county, as well as ensuring pathways to neighbouring areas. And the discussions and the explorations are continuing with providers of skill centres, be they in Gloucestershire, be they in other parts of Wales, with a view to developing opportunities for skill development within Monmouthshire itself. So yes, I thought the introduction was excellent. I hope it stimulates a discussion. My contribution is to put in the context that our strength is in our diversity, and let's continue to develop that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. And I'm going to open it now to questions from members of the committee. And Councillor Strong, I see your hand up first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the very comprehensive report. Two questions from me. Just one for clarification on meaning. There's a reference on, I think it's page 1, that says the Monmouthshire economy is working to its full capacity. But then just a couple of paragraphs down, there's what would seem to me to be the more realistic formulation. There is more that can be done. Monmouthshire can be more vibrant. And that seems to me to be a slight contradiction there. Maybe it's me in the way I've interpreted those sentences, but perhaps you can come back on that. And then I'd like to ask a question about NEETs. I don't know. We got Will sitting behind us. He might be the person to deal with this. We're all aware we've seen a significant rise in the number of NEETs, and I get from the way you phrased it that you're actually still looking into why that is happening. But I wonder if we got any preliminary thoughts. Is that something that's come almost unexpectedly or out of the blue, or is it something that we could almost have predicted because of the greater number of children with complex needs coming in at earlier ages, a few years back, who are now come up past year 11, and therefore it's, if not totally predictable, at least there was some indication that it was going to be a greater problem now, from what we knew perhaps 5 years ago. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. So, James or Hannah, do you want to pick those up? And I don't know if Will wants to come in on needs.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I could pick up the full capacity issue. So that assertion was related to, as Councillor Griffiths has mentioned, the high levels of employment within the county. It actually comes from the Lichfield study that was undertaken for us in preparing this strategy. And it also identified high levels of occupancy in our business premises, particularly our industrial space. I think linked to that, we could also note that our workplace is highly qualified as well. So we've got a very highly qualified workforce, low levels of unemployment, and in terms of businesses, a high number of businesses, many of which are keen to grow, and largely fully occupied, certainly industrial space anyway. So that was the background to that reference.
Yeah, thanks. I get that. So you're saying in order to grow more, we need more people, we need more industrial space, and so on. Yeah, okay, I've got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. Will, did you want to come in on the NEET question?
Thank you, Councillor Strong. Good morning, everybody. Will McLean. I'm the Strategic Director for Children, Learning, Skills and Economy. I think it's a complicated picture. I think we're seeing an increase in the complexity of need that exists within our population of children and young people. The other piece is, of course, that these are the learners who would have been really impacted by COVID and would have had that disruption in their secondary education as they work their way through. And this is where we see the NEET kind of rise at the sharp end of it, really. We are seeing challenges in some of our post-16 offer. So members of this committee, I think, will have heard from me in the past talking about how the work we're doing at the moment to increase the breadth of offer at post-16, particularly with an increase in the provision for level 2 qualifications. And that will hopefully allow more students to remain in our own sixth forms, because that negates the need for the risks around travelling. So I think one of the patterns we did see last year in terms of the NEET numbers was higher numbers than we'd seen in the Monmouth area. Some of that's around the accessibility of other FE providers. It's difficult, the transport issues are difficult and challenging from Monmouth. So those are the kind of things which layer on some of that complexity on top of the young person's needs themselves. We do have an early identification tool for children and young people who might become at risk of becoming NEET in the future. We continue to use that from a much earlier age, use that with our schools to understand how we can target support for those learners as they kind of mature through the schooling system. The numbers are not finalised as yet, but my understanding is in the last year, we've seen a reduction again in the number of children who are NEET in Monmouthshire, which is positive. And as soon as those numbers are kind of formally crystallised, we'll be able to bring those back as part of one of our reports.
Councillor Strong?
Yeah, thanks for that. Multifaceted, as always, I think, on it. And we await the fuller analysis. Thank you very much.
That does sound positive if the number of young people who are neither in employment, education or training is coming down. Well, thanks for that. That's very helpful. Just on this question of the unemployment rate and full capacity, It's encouraging and very good to see that overall unemployment level being at 2.8%. Obviously we would like it to be as low as it possibly can be. It's important also that we look at the economically inactive rate, which is different to the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate measures people who are actively looking for work. Economically inactive assesses the number of people who are able to work between the ages of 16 and 64, but who are not currently looking for work. And the Office of National Statistics most recent report says that that number is just about 20%, which is slightly less than the UK national picture. I think it's 21%. So I guess the reason why I'm asking about that, James and Hannah, is that sometimes we can fall into the trap of believing things are fine. But if we have 20%, 1 in 5 of the adults between the ages of 16 and 64 in Monmouthshire who are able to work but are not working, then there's something else happening there that we might need to look at raising our game for. Just wondered if you had any comments on that before I move to Councillor Buckler's question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for presenting those statistics. We continue to support that cohort into work through our employability offer, and as I said in the report, we've got Connect to Work with DWP coming in now in April, where I think there's a recognition across the UK of that increase in statistic, and looking at we can offer some very sort of bespoke support. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I suppose it's a question that is best answered by the work that we do to try to understand what more we might be able to do to add value to helping understand why 1 in 5 of the adult working population is economically inactive. So I guess some of this comes through in the plans and the work that we do, rather than anything that we can necessarily say just now. But James, you look like you're itching to come on in there.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if it would be helpful to look a little bit more closely at the data relating that you mentioned, the 20% rate for economic inactivity. I've got the data here. So 29.4% is due to is attributable to students, which is higher than the Wales average of 24.2%. 18% are residents who are long-term sick. That compares to 34% for Wales and 28% for Great Britain. So although it's obviously, I think we're talking around just under 2,000 people there, that's considerably lower than in other parts of Wales. And 25% is due to those who are retired, which is broadly double or approaching double the rate of other parts of the UK and Wales. So people who are students and people who are retired do account for a significant part of that number of people.
And again, without prolonging this, one of the very obvious issues there is students. So future employees or people who have graduated and are looking for work. So I really am just making this point that we could look at the 2.8% unemployment rate and describe that at full capacity. I'm not sure I would, and that we could beguile ourselves into believing that things are fine. Actually, behind that picture, there are some really, really important issues that we may need to look at, just how we can add value and grapple with it. But thank you, that's helpful. Moving on to Councillor Buckler, and I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. My first question, first of all, can you hear me properly?
It's just about audible, but it's very, if you could keep it fairly short, I think we'll have a better chance of understanding it, Councillor Buckler.
Okay, what I'm going to do, if I may, Chair, is I'll post my questions into the chat, and if you could read them for me, that would be the most...
Yeah, I must admit, I couldn't really make that out. I don't know if anyone else could fully. I almost, that's great. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Buckler. I almost interpreted that rather than really heard it, but that's very helpful. Sorry if we couldn't really make it out too clearly. So your first question is, business numbers in Monmouthshire have fallen from 4575 to 4445. Has the council evaluated the long-term sustainability of business support after the UK shared prosperity funding? Which current programmes are SPF dependent, and what is the plan for sustaining them after March 2026? Extremely patchy rural broadband is still a critical barrier to businesses in Monmouthshire. What are we doing to improve coverage? I admire your creative use of the use of one question, in which I'm right now at number 3, but let's just see if we could take one more, and then I'll hand over to James and Hannah. What interventions can be put in place to reduce the 18 to 24-year-old universal credit claimant rise from 441 to 729? What proportion of these cite transport barriers, unemployment levels of 2.8%? Do we know which section of the possible workforce are most affected by unemployment? I'm going to stop at those questions just now, Councillor Buckler, because it's already quite a number. And Hannah and James, do you want to have a go at those?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Buckler. Yes, we'll go through the questions on this that have been provided. James, do you want to pick up the first one on the business numbers? Or do you want me to go to question 2 and come back?
I think the business numbers links into a wider question, doesn't it?
Okay, you have. Yeah.
So, Chair, thank you. If I pick up, I think Councillor Buckler's first question, which relates to there's a very specific aspect around the number of businesses, but I think that's a statement of fact, and the question is actually related to the future of the Shared Prosperity Fund. So councillors will maybe be aware that this is the final year of the Shared Prosperity Fund. This has actually been a transitional year from Shared Prosperity Fund into a new type of funding. We're working very closely with officers both internally and across the South East Wales region to understand what that future shape looks like. We know that the money that was allocated previously through Shared Prosperity Fund will now be allocated through 2 streams of work. One is the Pride in Place funding stream, and Monmouthshire has been a recipient of funding under that stream of work. But the second is will be known in future as the Local Growth Fund. Welsh Government are currently out to consultation on how the Local Growth Fund will function. That's something which we're playing a very active part in at both a member and an officer level, lobbying to understand the dynamics of what the Local Growth Fund could look like, what the implications will be on the teams who work within Monmouthshire and the continuation of the work that they're able to do. It's a very significant point of time in terms of the change that's expected between SPF and the Local Growth Fund. We've been working with, as I said, colleagues across the region to understand what the current prospectus that's being consulted on might mean for the continuation of services in the future. It's certainly not a read across, and UK government and its UK government funding have been very clear now that Shared Prosperity Fund is coming to an end. It might well mean that we have to refocus some of the projects, some of the funding into different areas of work in the future. I'm sure it will be something which we talk much more about with members as that piece of work develops in the coming months.
Well, that's really helpful. Just the question really is very much about the sustainability of what's already been out there. And one of the great things that I think gets everyone's back is when government shifts, any government shifts from one form of description to another form of description. So whether it's the SPF or the LGF, the first question is about the sustainability of those businesses that have been supported by the shared prosperity funding. Is there anything you can say specific to that?
So we've done an awful lot of work with colleagues to understand the impact of the work in the Shared Prosperity Fund. I think that's a piece of work which is reaching its culmination, and I think it's something which we will be able to bring back and to share the achievements of shared prosperity work through both the core years of shared prosperity, but then latterly through the transitional year as well. And I think that would be something which would potentially be of interest to the committee.
Very much so. We'd really like to see that. And, what lies behind this is we're obviously very keen to see if this is working, who would not want to support it? If it's not working, let's find that out and understand why it's not working. Moving on then to the other questions, then Councillor Buckler's that she's placed in the chat. This issue of business numbers having fallen, is there anything you can say about that? Anything separate? And the patchy nature of rural broadband?
I'm not aware of anything to add on business numbers at the moment, I'm afraid, Chair.
So they have fallen, and
yes, they have. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on rural broadband?
Can we take that question away, Chair, and come back to you on the rural broadband?
Yeah, it'd be great if you would be able to...
It's not directly in our gift.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could reply, just make sure it gets to Robert, and Robert will circulate that to the committee. I appreciate that, that you would need to go and find out more.
And the one around the 180 days rule had in the sustainability of tourism business in Monmouthshire. Could we take that one to our tourism colleagues to get some information on that as well?
Yes, if you would get those back. Moving on to the question that Councillor Buckler's framed around what interventions could be put in place that are not already in place to reduce the 18 to 24-year-old universal credit claimants rise, which is really another way of framing ensuring those people are able to get into work. And that may well relate, James, to what you read out just a few minutes ago about 29% of the economically inactive number, which is 1 in 5 of the adult population in Monmouthshire being students. So I don't know, is there anything you could answer on that, please?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Butler. In terms of what interventions can be put in place, as I said in the paper, we've started a pilot with DWP offering a 12-week programme, and this is for young people claiming universal credit where there may be barriers into work, where it could be so simple as confidence, as skills, as maybe health condition barriers. What we're also finding then is that it's important for us to bring employers into those sessions so young people have those experience of interview skills. This may be young people that have been affected through COVID who are now feeling that they still need further support. So the figures are not unique to Monmouthshire. It is recognised across the UK. So the programme we are putting in place is having some really good outcomes at the moment. I hope that answers that question. Another thing you've put in there is around what proportion of these cite transport barriers. Transport is a barrier for our young people in accessing support and accessing employment. We're finding that we're running a cohort. We have a cohort in Abergavenny and in Caldicot. So transport does frequently come up as a barrier. So it's something we hope we can look to address with these cohorts going forward. I hope that answers that part of the question. And question 3, did you want me to take that, Chair, in terms of how can we strengthen the
yes, please.
STEM programme?
We recognise, Hannah, that we follow the national curriculum and therefore there are limitations on what is possible. But around that, is there anything that you might want to add to how we could strengthen science, technology, engineering and technology programmes in schools?
I think Will is dying to come in here. Will, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll come in. I think if the question is specific to the programme that's been rolled out over the recent past, I think we're seeing that in its early stages. So at the end of the last academic year, we took delivery of all of the kits for all of the schools. That's now being developed out and delivered to the schools. What we're now involved in is a really widespread professional learning offer, whereby all members of staffs in all of the schools are having the ability to access that professional learning, to be taught how to use the equipment, where it fits in their curriculum, where it can become a key part of it, what resource they can add. There's a really important piece around the sustainability and the longevity of it, in that we've been able to appoint Anna, who leads on the project for us, but also in each of the clusters we've been able to have a cluster lead, with that recognised through an additional teaching and learning responsibility, to actually hold that and maintain that. So it's not just a one-off, here's the kit, it's actually a much more sustained programme. And I know Anna's working with a whole range of different employers, companies in Monmouthshire and just outside Monmouthshire to actually become involved with that. And when we had the launch event, we had representatives from private sector there working with the children, talking to the children about what they could do, and actually really positively taking lessons from the children on that occasion about things that were already happening in kind of the young enterprise and space in some of our secondary schools. So we really want that to become a self-sustaining programme of work. I think it's been hugely positive that we've had the grant funding from Welsh Government, and that's what the team are looking to do to take it forward into the future.
Thank you, Will. And I notice also Councillor Griffiths has popped into the chat just to emphasise for those who can't see that the 180-day rule regarding tourism, that there is current work, research being undertaken on the impact of the 180-day rule, and that you anticipate that will provide evidence to support the existing lobbying in Welsh Government to review the figure of 180 days. So thank you, Councillor Griffiths, for putting that in the chat. And thank you, Councillor Buckler. I'm going to move on to Councillor Newell. I see you next with your hand up. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, you're quite right. And it's Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, James, Hannah, and Will. My question's on enterprise decline as well, so I think it may have already been answered, I'm not sure. But I was obviously pleased to see that we are the highest per head, 10,000 head at 773. But obviously there's been a decline, and I was going to ask whether there was any specific factors that contributed to the fall in active enterprises, and how, if we've identified it, if we can reverse that trend. And my other question was obviously on the gender pay gap. What targeted measures are planned to reduce the significant earning disparity between male and female workers? Just those two questions.
Thank you, Councillor Howells. And who wants to pick those up? James?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the number of enterprises, it's difficult to attribute that to any individual factor at the moment. The number did rise as we got closer to COVID. So 2019, we were seeing the numbers rise. It doesn't appear that COVID in itself is necessarily a factor in that. But I think potentially we'd need to do some more analysis really to understand why that change is happening really.
Is it something that fluctuates anyway? Is it?
It is, yes. Right. So, I mean, I've got the data in front of you now. So it's varied from, in 2010, we had just under 4,000, so 3,910 businesses, local businesses, and it has fluctuated. It doesn't appear that COVID in itself, or the aftermath of COVID, in fact, the numbers have risen again since then, 2022, 23, numbers rose again. So yeah, it's difficult to pin that down to an individual factor at the moment, but we'll look more closely to see if there is anything that comes out from that.
And on the gender pay gap that Councillor Howells was asking about.
Sorry, Councillor Howells, could you remind me of the question on that, please?
Yeah, just what targeted measures are planned to reduce the significant earning disparity between the male and female workers?
Don't know if that's something that colleagues wanted to pick up at all.
we have talked about some targeted work in this area, particularly around for females, whether, is something we're looking at perhaps at a development stage at the moment going forward. We spoke earlier where we run a Women in Business event back in April, very much well attended, women running, I suppose, smaller businesses. We're recognising, with perhaps women's needs in caring for children, and much more, we're in discussions around with some employers around some more sort of flexibility as well. So we are looking going forward, but it's very much in the exploratory phase at the moment.
I suppose one of the key ways that the council can exert some influences in the way it behaves itself in terms of addressing gender pay gap, and I'm aware that there is policy in place there that is an active policy, and I suppose the leadership that Monmouthshire County Council can give will be helpful in that. Councillor Howells, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Not at all, thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. Very interesting question about the falling active enterprises numbers. Sometimes fluctuations happen, but it's interesting to probe that one through. Thank you. So yes, sorry for the delay on your question, Councillor Newell. It's now over to you.
Thank you, Chair. If I could thank colleagues in Chamber for the report. As a business owner in Monmouth and someone who's really supportive of apprentices as well, who've just celebrated my latest apprentice getting her NVQ level 3. I found this report fascinating. I think it's great. Two very quick questions, Chair, if I may, to colleagues. First, has the team there identified any skill shortages in Monmouthshire? And if so, what are we doing to address that, and what can we do to improve things going forward? And my second question, which is a little bit Monmouth centric, so I do apologise, but colleague Will McLean mentioned about problems around the numbers of NEETs in the Monmouth area. And I wondered whether that was linked to the problems with public transport that we have in Monmouth in particular, and what can be done to address that, because of course we're one of the few towns in the county that doesn't have a train station. We have one bus in the morning that goes to Hereford, which is oversubscribed. Very few buses that go to the college in Newport. So I just think part of the local transport strategy is how we can help our younger people, especially in this area, but all of Monmouthshire, to be able to get to the education that they really want. And thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. Who wants to pick up those, Hannah or James? So the first of these being about the skills gap.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Newell. Great questions. So we have been out speaking to some of our significant businesses over the last 12, 18 months around looking at some of those skills gaps. It can vary. So depending on obviously the nature of the business, we've spoken to companies where, technical software skills. I think there is kind of generic around, communication, digital. We are looking to kind of collate the information and look at how and reach out more going forward. Now, I think it's one of the areas of the development over the next 12 months. Obviously, depending on workforces as well. There's been some of our companies have recognised they've got an older workforce and sort of succession planning. So it's quite a varied and comprehensive, I wouldn't say ask, but I suppose how we frame that assessment going forward. So it's quite different depending on the company, but there are some core similarities. And it's great to hear that your apprentice has been successful with a level 3 qualification. Really, congratulations. I'm going to hand to Will on the NEET question, if that's okay, Will.
Morning. Thank you, Councillor Newell, for the question. I think it's that piece around as you say, the accessibility of both Hereford and Newport in terms of alternatives for further education post-16. I think what it does, it places a great onus on our young people to actually kind of manage that quite significant transport expectation to Hereford, from Monmouth, that one bus and so on. If you then miss that bus, or the bus is oversubscribed, as you say, and then you don't make it, if you begin to fall into a pattern of not making that transport, that's when you can run that risk of not maintaining your provision in the FE setting. And I think that's kind of one of the key risks that we see. I think hopefully, therefore, that kind of expansion into level 2 kind of provisions in our post-16, as well as maybe even a broader offer at level 3, but vocational level 3 qualifications, would actually help us retain our children and young people in our schools, as opposed to them wanting to go to outside FE providers in any case. So I think there's a couple of different ways we can approach that.
Thank you, Will. And Hannah, Martin, Councillor Neill, did you want to come back on any point there?
Thanks for the replies, all great replies. And of course, with what I would ask, if we can encourage more and more young people these days are getting put off by university because of the amount of debts that they're accruing. But the workplace education can go up to NVQ level 7, which is degree level. So if as a county we could sort of work towards that, that'd be great. And finally, on Will, thank you for your answer. It may be that we just have to look at the sixth form schools and broaden the course options that they have, which will maybe negate the need for this extra transport. But I do understand the issues. They've been going on for years in the county. But I look forward to seeing where we are this time next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. I'm going to move us on to a final question, I think, from Councillor Pavia.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The Council positions the Economy, Employment and Skills Strategy, the EES strategy, as a framework whose delivery is now increasingly distributed to what is a suite of other strategies, and those are listed in the sort of covering report: procurement, asset management, energy, transport, food, destination management, need prevention. The report is asking us as a scrutiny committee to accept that progress now will primarily be monitored through those separate strategies, with only the key updates reflected back into the EES action plan. Now, while that reporting approach is a major governance choice with positives, with less duplication, but there's also, I think, there's a big scrutiny risk in terms of fragmentation, and it can make it harder for us to see whether the whole EES strategy is delivering coherent, measurable outcomes, especially where those outcomes rely on multiple strategies working together, and it potentially is a lot more difficult to see the interdependencies. For example, where the transport access is a barrier to apprenticeship, something we just sort of talking about. And there's also a danger of reduced accountability for cross-cutting outcomes, especially for areas like NEET reduction and inclusive growth. So for me, at the moment, this report reads like a list of what we've done, a list of initiatives, events and engagement, which is obviously positive across several strategies, rather than what has changed, what the outcome attribution is. And I think moving forward, this committee would find it beneficial if you could provide a single EES dashboard or scorecard with no more than probably 10 KPIs, and you could draw those KPIs out there: NEET rates, business birth, survival. You know, there's a list in there, and I'm sure the committee would help officers and a cabinet member to find those KPIs. But also with the baseline, whatever the sort of the post-COVID baseline is, whether that's 2022 or 23 baseline, and then those targets up to the end of this council term, 2027-28, with a RAG status. And I think that would allow us as a scrutiny committee to track whether the EES is working as a system. So I'm just wondering, and it's probably directed to Councillor Griffiths as a cabinet member, is this something you would take away and seriously consider, please? It just allow us to answer, I suppose, the so what question with a lot of the inputs within this report. And I think the second second question, Chair, is about the Cardiff Capital Region, and we've been a member of the Cardiff Capital Region now for 8 years. The report describes the benefits of CCR involvement, enabling mutual benefit, additional value, increased investment prospects, utilising networks and best practice opportunities to collaborate. But there's nothing tangible on the return. And I'm sure residents would really like to understand what tangible benefits have been secured for the local authority for our financial contributions to the region so far. So has there been any, a detailed piece of work to properly quantify the value of our membership and the financial contributions that we have and continue to make to the CCR? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pavia. Some good questions. Who wants to pick those up? The first one being about dashboard and scorecard, RAG status, and so on. Anna?
Thank you, Councillor Pavia. Great suggestion. When we were pulling this together and picking up on your point around, we didn't want this to be fragmented. We didn't want to see duplication. So sitting behind the paper is a comprehensive spreadsheet where we were looking at the different strategies and how they talk to each other. And it's taken us some time to get it to the place it is now. So if Councillor Griffiths is accepting of it, we'd be quite willing to look at it as a RAG assessment going forward. I think it would be really helpful.
Councillor Griffiths, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I think Councillor Pavia's point is a very important one. I think in all parts of our organisation, we need to constantly review the indicators we use for reporting, making sure they're properly focused, relevant, and let's do that exercise here. Chair, can I just make a comment on Councillor Pavia's reference to the Cardiff City region? Would that be okay?
Please do, yeah, we're just going on to that.
Just to remind everyone that the leader of the council, Councillor Brocklesby, is chair of the Cardiff City region, and she has put in place a regular, I think quarterly, reporting to full council on the CCR. I think that's important, and I'll talk to Councillor Brocklesby about the issues that Councillor Pavia has raised and seek to ensure that she responds to those in that report to full council. The CCR is constantly developing its relationship with Welsh Government, its relationship with the UK Government, continually changing, developing as those two governments develop their interrelationship. But whilst we need to do, as Councillor Pavia stresses, get some quantifiable information into our reporting, and that's what I will take back. But I'll just immediately reflect on the amount of investment that the CCR has put into compound semiconductor production, the support for businesses in that sector. The major business may be 2 miles out of our boundary in Newport, but the fact that we've got that global centre of excellence there is stimulating and supporting businesses actually within our boundaries, and we need to recognise that. The support the CCR put into medical technology, biotechnology firms, which Councillor Pavia and I both know well, such as Creo Medical, support from CCR into a firm like that, crucial for the future development of an economy like ours. But those are, I accept, off-the-cuff responses to your question, and what I'll take back is a need for us to report to this committee and to full council in a full way the impact that CCR is having on our economy.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. And it's obviously important, and I think behind Councillor Pavia's question is a question of confidence that this is working. And of course, you know, the recent reports in the last couple of weeks of the CCR's failed procurement exercise, now costing taxpayers £6 million, has an impact on this sort of relationship. Those are the reports that are being widely circulated in the public domain. So I think it would be very important that that the leader of the council addresses that in the report to the council, because we need to have that confidence in our important partnerships. Was there anything else that anyone wished to add to Councillor Griffiths' response on the Cardiff Capital Region? I think that's all. Councillor Pavey, are you content with those points? So thank you. Just a couple of points, if I may. First of all, to welcome the information in the report. It's all very helpful, and our interest is to try and see how we can use that to develop the strongest possible efforts as a whole council to improve the economy, employment and skills within Monmouthshire. I don't want to sound like the Grinch who stole Christmas in that regard, but trying to keep it real is very important. And as we're saying that we are the second strongest economic region in Wales, and referring to the UK Competitiveness Index of 2023, I had a look at the index for the whole of the UK, and it places Monmouthshire at number 79 out of 152, which actually places us in the bottom half. So I think some of the comments that we've heard this morning need to be kept in that reality check. And that's the UK. If you then move on to the government's UK Competitiveness Index for the UK against OECD, the UK ranks last year, the UK ranked number 30 out of 38 OECD countries. So we need to keep that as a reality check and not compare and contrast ourselves with those who we might be able to say, look, we're doing better than. In the real world, the UK is the wider world within our nation, and we have to consider that we're actually 79 of 152 on the very reference information that you're using. And the UK itself stands at 30 out of 38 in the OECD as far as the published information is concerned. So I think it really does challenge us all to say, actually, let's not look at where we're doing better than others. How do we need to strengthen our game and raise our game? If I may point out 3.1, the reference to the economic impact of tourism, and that's increased to £352 million in 2024, a very substantial part of the economy of the county. And really, I suppose just a question, what are we actually doing to support that? Because there's a great deal of challenges out there right now. Just to mention also, I strongly welcome the placemaking plans that are being brought forward. I think that could be an extremely positive way of engaging local residents in their own towns, as well as making them as relevant as possible and actually putting in things that are very important. But overall, I think it's worth us reflecting in the report. Does it actually sound like if you walk around the high streets and talk to our businesses in the high streets, if you talk to our hospitality businesses, and if you talk to our wider business sector in Monmouthshire, does the report reflect the sheer level of challenges that businesses of all kinds are actually talking about very loudly right now? I'm not sure it does. I think it paints a different kind of a picture, and I'm not sure many business owners would accord with that description. And I just ask you to think about that, and it may be that needs to be considered before that comes to the Cabinet. I think in February, is it, that this report is due to come to Cabinet? 7th of February, I believe. But okay, just with those comments, I move the report and thank everyone for the questions and responses that have been given. Much appreciated. We're going to move on to the next item, and that is about potholes. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, James. Thank you, Hannah. Hi, Carl. Nice to welcome, and you come on down. Yeah, there's nothing that could attract people more to the shoot than what we have that stuff. The joy pot. There must be a calendar out there for this shirt, which is Potholes Presents. There must be one. That's an idea. Why don't we monetize it? Sign it up. I bet you we could sell 1 million of them. Okay. Thanks very much. I'm going to welcome to the meeting Carl and Suan, who are going to take us through what is not a report, but is, I think, a presentation that you're going to take us through in terms of the questions that we asked about potholes and degraded roads. And to that extent, there will be some connection to some other matters, such as drains, culverts, as I put in my notes and my bullet points to you, for all the obvious reasons. But I'm going to hand over to you, and if you'd be kind enough just to introduce your job titles as you do this for the benefit of residents. Thank you very much.
Hi, councillors. Chair, thank you very much for inviting us today. There's myself, Suan to my side, and we've got Chris Mitchell and Graham Kinsella on the call as well to answer the questions. I've tried to cover off the questions that were asked of us in scrutiny, so I'm going to run through the slide deck and I'll make that as quick as possible, covering as many points as possible, and then open it up to councillor questions, but the wider team are here to support and give them more technical answers than I possibly could.
Carl, just a very quick one so that people don't make unnecessary notes. You'll be circulating and sharing the presentation, I'm sure, after the meeting, and we can share that more widely, yeah?
We'll share the presentation, and then through the meeting where other questions come forward, we'll share that detail as well, because I'm sure there will be other questions that are not covered in the full...
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I got to remember how to use this now. So the highway section, as I said, we've got Chris Mitchell, operational team, Suan from the network asset team, Graham Kinsella from the traffic and road safety team. The highway section is made up of 8 distinct parts, each department, very different functions that they carry out, but all interlinked. Potholes lead to drainage, drainage leads to potholes, road closures, all of those interact with each other as a team. So whilst it's a multidisciplinary team, ultimately we are looking after one asset, which is the network and everything that is linked to it. So the immediate team here today are there, with a little bit about what they do in general. That's certainly not the full list of everything that the team undertake, but gives an idea of the scope of what they deal with as parts of their own team. And then the wider then section, obviously Ross Price flooding, very much in everybody's mind over the last 3 weeks, with everything that's gone on. We've got the design team, Rob Davis, development control, Mark Davis, street lighting is Gareth Sage and Paul Stone, and then Sutra maintenance is Gareth Sage. So the Sutra side of it, we deal quite a lot with Welsh Government, but it is the maintenance side of it rather than the decisions on what closures happen. But we do deal quite a lot now more with national highways since the Lays Bend issue up in Monmouth and the M48 Severn Crossing issue with HGVs. All of these teams pull together to ensure our legal duties are met, and the teams need to liaise with everyone. And as I put at the bottom, everyone's an expert. Everyone who drives on the road, everybody who walks on the pavement, everybody who can see a road from their window believes they are an expert on highways. So the team is dealing with a lot of people with a lot of different views, and that brings with it a lot of challenges. It is one of the few departments within the council, possibly outside of waste, that deals with everyone every day. You can't go anywhere without that highway. You can't go anywhere from your home, Say you've got walking up to your back garden, you're probably stuck there. It's probably the first journey you'll make from hospital and the last journey you'll make to the other one. So, it is important throughout our lives, and we recognize...
You're making me feel miserable now, though, Carl. I was hoping for more of a pep talk.
Yes, okay, I'll turn it more upbeat now, future. So, yes, the importance of this is not lost on us. Our involvement with the communities that we serve in whatever arm that is, we know the importance of that as well. We know the importance of keeping all of our communities up to date in what we're doing, and we know the struggles that can cause when you start to think about how many people we have to interact with. So the highway asset, over 1,500 kilometres of highway, 575 footway, 163 bridges, over 20,000 drainage assets, more crossings, drop curbs, lights, marks, signs, all of the things that you will have come to this team to discuss, then we can shake a lot of sticks at. From an highway perspective, there's more being added all the time, more assets being added all the time. Very few ever get taken away. The asset is continually deteriorating, and the expectation of the public is continually increasing. So it is a challenge for us, and it is a lot about expectation management as we move forward. So the highways operations, and Chris will explain the potholes. I didn't put any pictures of potholes, but I will get some for the calendar for next year. No problem at all. So the highways ops, they deal with everything that is on the highway, winter servicing. As we go into winter now, that will be our primary function. Through the summer months, we've got work that we do on behalf, or they do on behalf of Suan, which is capital works, and that's quite an important part of how the highway function works in Monmouthshire. The highways team, as we would call them, the operational maintenance team, do a lot of surfacing works during the summer months to earn enough money to buy grit and tarmac for the rest of the year. So we don't have enough of a revenue budget to have a standalone revenue service without doing some resurfacing works to support that. So by default, we are quite reactive in the way that we deal with maintenance, because in the summer we are doing other work to ensure we've got enough money to survive through the winter. And that's a key part of how this council operates the highway function. And we can go, I'm sure we'll go more into that in the questions. The highway asset and network is a code of practice, well-managed highway. That's how Suan delivers her part of the network, her part of the jigsaw. And that ultimately comes out from a public question and members' question to when are we resurfacing their roads. And all of those questions play into that thing of potholes and road resurfacing and drainage and all of the assets that we look after. So in brief, we do that through condition management surveys, the GAST surveys. Obviously green is good, amber not so good, red really not very good. But thankfully there's more green than amber and red on most of the GAST survey works that we've done. The new GAST surveys have just been completed. We have some information on them, but we're still working on that. I'm sure you'll appreciate the last 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks for this team has been extremely busy. So coming into this today, I would have liked to have had more of that detail, but that's quite difficult when we've all been dealing with the flooding over the last few weeks. but we will get that information out to members. So this is what it looks like to us. The bigger picture is the network showing the blues, the yellows, the greens and the reds. So you can't see many reds on there, or at least if you're colourblind like me, you can't see many reds on there, thankfully. So I'm seeing a very nice picture of green, yellows and blues, which is good. We monitor it with at level 3, which is the yellow. We do monitoring, so we monitor the network from there. Level 4 and 5 is our starting point for the roads that need resurfacing. We add that to information that we hold on the hierarchy of the road, which is what is the road serving, primary, secondary, tertiary, get them in the right order. And then we put in other things like schools, hospitals, shops, and then we add engineering and inspectors assessments. We add how many My Council Services requests we've had about that road, and we add how many insurance claims we've had against that road as well. And then that gives us the roads as a priority that we are going to resurface. So that's how it's done in the background. I know it can look from the outside like a bit of an haphazard way we decide what roads are being resurfaced and what ones are just going to have potholes filled, but there is, to an extent, a science behind it to get to that point. So in the first instance, the GACE surveys show us everything that's red that needs to be done. There's too many reds to do everything, so then we've got to have some kind of prioritisation tool. And that was brought to the CAB Council probably 4 or 5 years ago, I would have thought, and that was how we've gone forward since that point in prioritising the network to be repaired. A little bit about bridges, and I know that isn't being covered here, but I just wanted to put it in as well because these are our assets as well. So the bridges and culverts all add into the quality of the highway. On the bottom, you'll see that I've mentioned Chain Bridge, Old Wye Bridge, Gilden Viaduct and Staunton Road. They are the 4 big projects that we are currently working on, looking at trying to move forward with. Many of them have been there for a long time being monitored, which is fine, but at some point we need to fix, as we can't just keep monitoring, particularly the older structures like Old Wye Bridge and Chain Bridge. They need work on them. It comes at a great expense. Those 4 there on their own are probably in the region of 25 to 30 million. We have a £2 to £3 million budget each year, so that's 10 years of our budget just to do those 4 things. So that gives an idea of the scale of what we have in front of us as a council, as you as members have to make decision on, and us as officers have to try and work with many different people to draw down funding to do some of these works.
Carl, just to that point, are there any national funds that we can apply for in regard to those, or are we restricted only to the funds that we have within the authority?
So we've this financial year, next financial year, we have local government borrowing initiative LGBI funding from Welsh Government. That's predominantly for resurfacing roads and addressing potholes, not fixing potholes because that's a revenue cost, but the resurfacing to alleviate a lot of potholes. We have put some structural, some of that towards some of the structural works that we've got to do to try and keep the network open. We will be applying to Welsh Government for more funding, but that is getting more difficult as they've changed the way that they fund the highways functions from Welsh Government, with it going through CCJs and CCR as well. So it is, in theory, the money, instead of being centralised in Welsh Government, is put out to the regions. Monmouthshire is as important as it is to me and to all of you. It is not the most important within the wider region in terms of economy and our standing, our size, in reality, of the network and how many people it serves. So we are, at the moment, we're punching above our weights slightly. We are getting quite a lot of funding through that system, particularly active travel has benefited over the last few years. But as we move forward and the other counties are also facing really difficult and challenging budget pressures, this regional approach is going to become more difficult for us to draw down that level of funding that we require, particularly for these bigger projects like Staunton Road. For us. So, yes, we will always look for external funding wherever it's available. We will always try and draw down any funding streams to support the council. But as we move forward, there is going to be more reliance on council capital to do quite a lot of these works. So this is the LGBI programme for this year, and we did share this on the members' workshop. The one of point is the very first one, Landfosh Bridge, Abergavenny Road. That's one of the very few out of the LGBI programme that we put this forward this year that we won't complete. All the others we will have completed. And the only reason that we haven't completed the Landfosh Bridge is because we're doing an active travel project in the same area, and we wanted to get betterment out of both schemes. So we've combined the highways budget for resurfacing alongside the active travel budget to get the best proposal out for those works. So adding the two budgets together, working collaboratively across the teams, gets a much better outcome. So that's one of the only ones that won't be completed this year at the LGBI. Siwan's recently met with Welsh Government. They're very pleased that our programme is on target and a lot of the resurfacing work is being done. So we're in a good position with the LGBI funding this year and next year. We're hoping that continues because we recognise the difficulties that we've got with our budgets going forward. I won't labour over them, but we'll share the slideshow so you can see what all the others are. From a road safety perspective, there's a few schemes going ahead this year as well. Staunton Road, bottom end of Staunton Road is going as planned. Slightly further up Staunton Road, we've got some, I don't like to say issues because that isn't the right word, but we've got some slowing down of works due to badger sets. So all of these things add to the network program as we go into the year. We can't do a lot of the ecology checks 2 or 3 years in advance because the ecology changes. So it is we make a program, we look to deliver that program, and then some things by default slow us down. And I'm very pro badgers, dormice and everything else. So I don't want anybody to think I'm anti it, and I'm not causing. It's not an issue from that perspective, but it does slow down the road building. Yes.
Karen, while we're just on this slide, I hope you don't mind, just for clarification on a couple of things as we go through. I noticed you managed to pop a photograph of yourself in there on the way as well. But one of the things that I think quite a lot of the discussion I have with colleagues and beyond is the desire to see a project plan. And the project can change. The plan might not survive the first encounter with reality when it gets going, and it might not give a specific date for every single part of it. But the sight of a project plan showing the various stages that need to be considered, and the lack of that causes concern in a number of ways. Can you comment on that, please?
Yes, of course. And I will come to that, but I'll cover that now as well.
Oh, sorry.
One of the big issues that we've got is when we put down a programme of work, if we write it down and publish it, it becomes almost the gospel. So it is quite difficult then for us, we heavily caveat things, saying all these different reasons, ecology being one of them. One of the reasons why works might not go ahead. So we have a list of works ready for next year. We've got a programme of works against the LGBI, against the small schemes, against other works. We're happy to share that with members. The list as it stands, I'm happy to share it with the scrutiny. The difficulty is, and I'll explain this on the very last slide, whenever we are programming works for the next financial year, we are also in storm season. And that changes the priority of the roads as they stand, as more become damaged or deteriorate at different rates. And then that changes the work programme for the following year. And like anyone else, if I saw my road on the list, I would be over the moon that my road was going to be resurfaced. And then if it gets bumped off the list for any reason, I'd be very, very angry. So it is managing that expectation, but we're more than happy to share the list of roads as they stand for next year as programmed in the capital budget.
So Carl, that is very helpful, and please do. My question was not so much about a programme of planned works, but actually any major project, site of that project plan. So the various stages of any project, that we can see what they are. A significant part of that to enable us to be able to communicate, enable residents, businesses to have a better understanding of what goes into it, because people jump to conclusions very naturally without that. So I don't know if that's something that we can get to, for any major project, clarity about what the project plan is, such as it might be capable of being shared.
Yes, one of the things that we'd like to do going forward is exactly that. When there is a major project coming forward, is, certainly along with you, Chair, with the work on Chain Bridge, is to have those meetings as early as possible when we have something to communicate with the public and the communities, and also take on board what it means for the public and communities when we're doing these works. So we have a project plan, we know the steps that we have to go through, we know the ecology, we know certain parts of it. For example, Chain Bridge, what we don't know is what the contractor is going to tell us that can be done. What we want to do with the contractor is try and limit as much as possible any difficulties for the community around there. It's difficult to go to a community too early when you haven't got enough information, because people wonder why you're there. But also, as you said, if we're not providing enough information, people fill the voids, and that is a real difficulty for us at the moment. The voids are being filled. Social media is relentless in making up stories, and to a certain extent, if we're not counteracting them, the public believe those stories. So yeah, it's a good point, and one that we want to get better on, certainly, as we move forward. A little bit more about the programme for this year. So, but I know it wasn't specific to this thing, but everybody's got an interest in the road safety part of the delivery of what we do, and it is a key part of our network and the decisions we're making going forward. As with Landfoist Bridge, what we're doing is having a much wider meeting with more teams when we're setting out the network plan for the following year, and bringing in more different teams to ensure that we are getting that betterment. So where we can previously we would have lifted 40 mil out of tarmac and put 40 mil back down. What we're looking to do is get betterment on all the schemes we are doing going forward. It's not always possible. It's not always a fund available, but where there is, we are now in conversation with a much wider group of officers as we set our forward programme. And I would like to get to the point where we are doing that with members and the public. How that happens is slightly more difficult, but I think the earlier that we share the forward programme for the following year, the more opportunity people will have to come to us and say, have you thought about this? But it is caveated. So a bit more about the stuff that we do. Graham can answer any questions on this that Chair, the members and people online have. And then this is slightly to your point, Chair, of the programme of works going forward for us. We've set it probably 3 weeks ago. We have a programme of work that we will happily share, and over the last 3 weeks all this damage has appeared on the network that needs funding to get these works done. And I know we are asking Welsh Government for additional funding for next year to support the damage in Storm Claudia, but we also know that there's going to be some of our capital money being utilised for that. So something on that list that we've already put forward or suggested will need to be knocked off. So these are predominantly around the Lantoni Valley area, across to Grosmont, but there is a similar picture across the county. Whenever there's a storm, we see this kind of damage. The long picture on the bottom is our R7. I couldn't remember if it was R1 or R7. So it's R7, it's the road coming out of Forest Coal Pit going into Powys. You can't see it as a road, but the straight line at the very top, that's where the road is. There's an 8-metre drop from the edge of the carriageway down, and then a further 8-metre drop down to the river. And the river just took all of that away. That's going to be several noughts to fix. Probably 1.5 million as a rough estimate of the work that needs to be done, because the road will need to be moved back. The picture on the right is the Grosmont culvert at Kent Church. It was programmed in for this year to do some work on this and repair work, and then the latest storm has just come through and ripped up the road completely. So we are looking at a temporary bridging structure going in there, so we can make sure that community has access down onto the Kent Church area. But that's the damage that one storm, those 5 or 6 pictures there give an idea across a very small section of the county of the damage any one storm can do, and that's why we get slightly nervous about pushing a forward programme at this point in the year out for the next financial year, when we've got all of these other things to manage, and we are in November. So yeah, potentially we've got another few storms before we get to that next financial year.
You've been out of it for too long in the last 2 weeks. We entered December on Monday.
Oh yes. Did we?
Sorry, I'm just pointing out we're now in December to Carol. He's been so busy with the emergency works, but he's lost track of time.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be January, February, March as well. We'll go just as quickly for me. So yes, as I said, we recognise the challenge that we've got. We want to share more information with everybody. It's not about transparency. That information is there. We're happy to share it. It is about managing the expectation when that is shared, following events like Storm Claudia 2.5-3 weeks ago. So yeah, I'll stop sharing now and open it up to questions for the wider team. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. And before I open it up to colleagues, could I just put on record on behalf of the whole committee to yourself, Carl, Suanne, Graham, Chris, who are online, Ross, Rob, Mark, and everybody else who has been involved in the response to the dreadful flooding that we've had around the north of the county, particularly just over 2.5 weeks ago it was now, and many of us are only too aware of the fantastic amount of work that you did at a moment's notice, working your socks off, and it's hugely appreciated. I know I talked to and visited a lot of properties, a lot of residents who had been flooded out, and they spontaneously said that they were very grateful, even though they'd been flooded out, for the very rapid response that they'd received from the emergency response team in Monmouthshire County Council, as well as all those other great colleagues who provided so much, a huge amount of effort and time. So really just on behalf of the committee, I know colleagues, you would want me to express the thanks of the committee to that huge amount of work that you've all undertaken, and I hope you all get a reasonable weekend coming up next. Let's check the weather forecast before we say too much. I'm going to open it to the members of the committee for any questions you may have. I see Martin, I think, with your hand up first of all. Sorry, Councillor Newell.
Thanks, Chair. Can I echo your words, first of all, to Carl and Graham and all your colleagues at MCC. My area in Monmouth Town was one of the worst, if not the worst, affected. And I've got to say, I bombarded Carl with messages, and the work was going on behind the scenes without me even knowing. And I appreciate he couldn't reply to my messages, but he read them and they just did what they had to do. So huge thanks to all of the team and all the MCC staff. You were absolutely incredible. And, I can't thank you enough on behalf of my residents and businesses. Two very quick questions, if I can. One is Monmouth-centric, and the other one is just a generic question, if I can. I had an emergency situation in Monmouth about 2 months ago, and you're probably familiar with the situation that the traffic lights on the dual carriageway, the A40 that goes right through Monmouth at Y Bridge, failed. And there was so I phoned 999 to report this. I was so worried there's just going to be a huge smash. And there was 999 told me that they couldn't react to the incident because MCC and Sutra are arguing about who was actually in control of that stretch of road. So it was a huge danger to the public. So whilst I've got everyone's attention, I just really need to...
Sorry, Casanio, you just went onto mute there.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, it was the A40. Did you hear my initial part about the...
We heard the initial part, but you were just coming to get to the specific.
Yeah, the specific was I called 999 to report the traffic light failure on the A40 there. There was going to be a massive smash. 999 told me that they were aware of the problems, but they couldn't do anything at the moment because there was an argument going on between MCC and Sutra about who was responsible. So we had a huge public safety issue. So I'm going to ask for a copy of the call and maybe send that on. But who is responsible for that stretch of road? And my second question is that there are other alternatives to sorting out potholes. I know that, in fact, in Monmouth, my roads are pretty good actually in my area, so I've got no real complaints. But I do know that a lot of fixes are temporary. But there are other ways now that become available that they may cost us more up front, but long term, there may be a different way that we fix our roads and fix our potholes. They become a more permanent, arrangement, and that will save us money and a lot of trouble in the long term. And thanks again, Carl, to your team for the floods.
Thank you, Casanio. I don't mean to suggest that the issues around the changes to or the responsibilities around network flow are really, really important. The focus of this is very much about potholes and road conditions. So I'd really not want to broaden this too much because there can be many questions about many sections of road around the county. But in brief, Carl, if you could possibly address the first of those and on the second as well, of course, please.
So responsibility for the A40 is with Sutra. The traffic lights are, depending on where the traffic lights are, they do fall onto our network as well. We certainly wouldn't be arguing with Sutra whose responsibility it is when the traffic lights are shut down and damaged. We would both be sending teams out there. We work very closely with Sutra and National Highways now, certainly after the Leys Bend work. So I'm not sure that the police have provided the right level of information on that event because both sets of teams were deployed from the council up there. The emergency number should always be the police, and they should whether I can categorically say that we weren't having debates on whose responsibility it was, but even if we were, it is still the police is the first responder. They would need to be there managing traffic. So yeah, if there is a copy of that, councillor, the dialogue, I'm more than happy to look into that as well. On the second of the questions around potholes, I'll hand over to Chris Mitchell now. Chris Mitchell's joined us, taken over from Steve Lane, so I'm sure he can respond to that question. There are other ways of dealing with potholes. We've trialled some of the other machinery. but ultimately, as Chris will explain, it is about safety first. So,
Carl, sorry to break in, and Chris, you'll come in a second, but I'm aware that Councillor Strong has to leave the meeting at 12, and I just wondered if you had a question that we could add to this before you leave, Councillor Strong.
No, it's okay. I'll leave it. I'll pick it up on the recording.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But thanks, Carl, for your presentation. Excellent.
Sorry for interrupting, Carl and Chris. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, morning, Chair. Morning, councillors, committee. Yeah, temporary pothole repairs. There are many ways in which a pothole can be sorted. We undertake the approach of as Carl said, safety first. Our initial response will be to make safe, to remove the hazard, whether it be a pothole, trip, or anything else. Temporary repairs are shown to be timely, cost effective, significantly lower cost than implementing a permanent repair, and they are actually relatively robust. Quite often they will give us that breathing space. Going back to some of the comments that or the presentation that Carl gave, where we know we have issues and we are returning to locations or vicinities where we're undertaking those temporary repairs, we will look then with that engineering knowledge, network knowledge, to try and incorporate those into our wider sort of programs of permanent repairs. We've currently got quite a bit of a mix. After that initial temporary repair, we also undertake patching works. We use materials that can be quite quick to install, so we don't have to depend upon hot tarmac material. The material can go in, it will self-level, it can be driven on immediately, so it reduces that disruption. But ultimately, it is about making the network safe in as quick a time as we possibly can.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Neil, was there anything that you wanted to add to on that particular point?
No, thanks to Chris and Carl for all their good work. And like I said, the roads in my patch are actually very, very good at the moment. And so thanks for that, and all the swift responses that I do get when we reach out. So thanks, team. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Strong, I know you're going on to attend the Long Service Award ceremony. So if you'd be good enough to pass on our thanks to those who are receiving awards from the committee. Thank you very much. And over to Councillor Howells as next question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Carl. Thanks, Suan. Yeah, just add my thanks also for the work you've been doing up in Monmouth. I was up there on the Thursday and Friday, and your name in particular, Carl, was bounced around for your organisational skills and allocating help where it's needed, but the whole team as well. So thank you. I also thank you for the work you've done in Usk here. So on the Monmouth Road, they seem to hold up under the pressure of the drainage there, and also on Porthcawn and Abergavenny Road. So we got some lovely tarmac roads there. Just a couple more that need to be addressed, and we'll smooth all the way through. So thanks again. So just a bit of clarity on potholes and what is a pothole and what isn't a pothole. So, you know, I've heard in the past that anything under a dinner plate isn't really a pothole, so it doesn't take priority. And I might argue that a stitch in time saves 9. So, you know, rather than letting it to be a bigger pothole, then is it worth addressing the smaller ones as well? I might be wrong on that point. And obviously drains, how they affect, especially this time of year. If they're not draining properly, then they'll soak into those potholes, and the ice will get to them and, of course, make the potholes worse. So if you can address a little bit about drains and how, if there is a work plan for each town sort of thing, you know, sort of, I've been reporting drains on a regular basis and they're blocked, etc. But it'd be nice to know that there's a work plan that maybe annually they can go around and vacked up, or whatever the term is. Also, what have we got here? It's 1,500 kilometres of road and 575 kilometres of pavement. Is the budget split equally between pavements and roads? So, you know, they're not. And finally, just the other question is, unadopted highways, I've got one particular manhole that's on an unadopted highway, and I'm having real issues of identifying who owns that. And it's an open, it's a metre deep, and somebody just sent me a picture yesterday with a small child standing next to it, which could easily fall down there. I've been in touch with Welsh Water, the developer of the site, and also MCC, and no avail really. I am working with enforcement to try and get hold of the legal team to get who owns that. But is there anything we can do to make the area safe, really, as well? I'm finding it very frustrating because I don't have those skills to find out who they are. It's nice to sort of pass it on to a team, but I've bounced 3 teams at the moment and I'm not getting anywhere. So just those 3 questions, really. Yeah, thanks.
I counted 4, but maybe I've added 1.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go over my limit.
Let's let it go. It's getting up to Christmas, so let's just give you that extra one. But if we could move into those, Carl. So the first one is really about what is a pothole, and the descriptions around that are perhaps technical.
I'll let Chris take the pothole question. Probably the drainage question as well, coming from Chris. Sue-Ann can pick up the question on the resurfacing programme, and then I'll try and, for the last question for the councillor, if you pass the details to me of where this is, we'll look at it.
Great, and then there's a budget split between pavements and roads. But okay, that's great. So Chris, are you taking it first?
Yeah, so where we've got potholes and defects reported, they will be categorised. So it will essentially look at the hierarchy of road that the defect is on, the size of the defect as the councillor touched upon, and that will then enable us to categorise and respond within an appropriate timescale. Obviously, if you have something the size of a dinner plate on a rural lane, it's probably going to be treated in a different way to exactly the same size pothole that's in a wheel track on a main road through Monmouth, Abergavenny, or on one of our high-speed A roads. So that's how we would categorise that work. Look to respond accordingly with the resources, whether that be in hours or out of hours as well. With regards to drainage, we are in a position with the resources available that we address those on a reactive basis. There is no sort of preventive maintenance program in place or schedule of gully cleansing. So where defects are reported to us or block gullies, we will go out. What I would say is that particularly at this time of year, leaf litter can be a real problem for us. The gullies themselves quite often will be working quite adequately, not blocked at all, but it will be the leaf litter sitting on the top. So this is something that quite often residents themselves may be able to address locally, and sort of enable our resources then to be focused on the gullies that are blocked and need our specialist equipment to attend.
Thank you, Chris. Sandra, did you want to pick up the next?
With regards to the budget on the carriageway and the footway, there isn't an equal proportion split. We do put forward quite a long list of works for footways, and we have got sort of capped at the limit of. And
there was a GAST analysis on pavements done as well, and that's done now, is that?
Yeah, so we've got now a footway condition, of which we have started to produce a list, and it is quite an extensive amount of money.
Right.
And we have had a line drawn of how much would be reasonable at the moment with our accountant.
Right. And I guess, is there any active travel money available for those repairs or not?
So that's what we focused on. So there is a large amount of money available around the Chepstow area. So whilst our money is available in that area, we're looking to address the footways and to make that money go further and to achieve more at the start. And then we're working with active travel then on the areas targeting where they've got money and what we've got the footways listed. So we are bringing it together and obviously making the money go further the best we can.
Okay, Councillor Howes.
And could I just briefly, Chair, as Chris said, we don't have, by default, we are more reactive, particularly this time of year. As I said in the presentation, a lot of our work is around bringing in funding during the summer, so it's very difficult to have a scheduled maintenance cycle in place. We have invested additional money this year within the grounds team to bring in an extra sweeper. In the winter, it will focus on, as Chris said, drains, leaves, and anything that's going to block the drains in flooding. And then in the summer, it'll switch back to litter and clearing detritus and weeds. So it's not specifically highways, it is in the cleansing team, in Nigel's team, that work is going on, but it is there to supplement the highways team in the work that they do.
And councillors can request that just through the MyMon app, whatever, just in the standard way.
Yeah, the more, and this is quite an important part as well, the more that the councillors use the MyMon, the My Council services to report things, by default they add to the list for resurfacing, because we capture that data. That's how we capture the data and add it into what is the next road to do. So the more that everyone uses My Council services, hopefully the quicker we can respond. But as well as that, we can see where we are failing, where our response are falling down. So if it's all coming through that system, I should have said at the beginning, and I take on board the chair's points, the last 3 weeks has been pretty hectic for me. I spent a lot of time on site. I've got 2,900 unread emails. It's not that I don't want to respond to people. It's not that I haven't been working, but the volume of email traffic that comes not just into me, but to the whole team is phenomenal. And we don't have to be out of the system long doing other work for that to back up on us. So it's, I'm very conscious that one of the things from the public and sometimes from members is that we're slow to respond. Yes, we are slow to respond when we are dealing with other bigger issues going on at that point in time. So for all members here, and for any members that pick up this recording after, my apologies if you've sent me emails within the last month. I'll probably be working for the next month trying to catch up on them. So, yeah.
Thank you, Carl. And having been in Monmouth High Street 2 weeks ago on Monday, I noticed that it was very dark. It was about 6 o'clock, and I thought I spotted you in high vis, but I wasn't sure it was you because it was covered in mud. And then I realised it was you. So you really put yourself in there. Okay, just if I may, Councillor Hannes, was there anything else? You've covered your questions.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks.
Great. The lights have just gone out in the chamber, but don't worry. It's just a power cut, I think, probably. A couple of questions or points, if I may. Electric vehicles, they are typically 300 to 500 kilos heavier than their internal combustion equivalent, so up to half a ton heavier. Have we, or has work been carried out more widely rather than Monmouthshire on the impact of those much heavier vehicles on our road conditions? Is there a relationship that needs to be better understood? Because quite clearly there's a major transition going on, and if we're basically seeing cars 300 to 500 kilos heavier than their internal combustion engine equivalents taking over the roads, what will that do for the state of the roads? Do we have any, are we tapping into any knowledge there? Second one is that we monitor potholes, in the way that we do, but I'm not sure that we factor in cycling. And, there are quite a number of examples that we could talk about, but just to exemplify the point is almost, I think, Chris's point that a dinner plate pothole in a rural road will not have the same urgency as the same size on a major route, which we can all understand, those people driving cars. If you're cycling, you're more likely to be on that rural route. And in the dark of a morning or in late afternoon through to the evening, there is obviously a level of peril for the cyclist that I do wonder, do we take that into any consideration? And if so, is there more that we need to do in terms of possible even signage if there is a more serious concern about the calibre of the roads? And I notice and welcome Councillor Maybe to the meeting, Councillor Maybe, as the Cabinet member, and appreciate you being there at short notice to the meeting. It's really just to ask, if I may, a third question, which is based on an assumption that I may be wrong in, but if I just put it out there and you would be able to deal with it in your own way, it would seem to me that if we were to go around and ask 1,000 people in the county what their number one issue is in the county, they would probably have the number one issue as potholes and the degradation of roads. I may be wrong in that assertion, but I think we'll probably agree it's very high in there on the list of a great many people. And yet we are recognising really in the course of this presentation, as much as any wider discussion that we have, that we don't prioritise it as a council. In the same way that councils across the country are faced with the challenge of how do you prioritise it when you're spending 60 to 70% of your overall budget on social care, and we're familiar with that very real position. But how do we ensure that our residents understand that what might be the most important concern for them is not underappreciated by the council, but simply that there is an absolute limit to what can be done? And have we got that balance right? And I just wondered if possibly Carl and Sian could answer the first two. You might have a minute just to consider that third question, Councillor Maybe.
With regards to the electric vehicles being heavier, we have been made aware of that, and obviously we are keeping an eye on what is being done at the moment. So obviously it's just starting to evolve, and obviously it's always been sort of factored that heavy goods vehicles are the most damaging on the roads. Obviously this is going to start to change it slightly. So we are looking out for technical notes of is there failure starting to occur on junctions because of these vehicles and their turning movement. So we are aware of it, and we are looking out for journals and stuff which will help us, and if we become aware of it, obviously we'll share it with yourselves then.
Thank you, Sian. I realise it's a bit of a difficult one to give an absolute answer to because it is an evolving picture, but it does seem such an important issue when we're talking about potholes and how degradation of roads and how we look at that moving forward, when we're seeing this major change to the way that people are moving around the county in much, much heavier vehicles. So thank you for that, and it will be great to be kept informed about that.
It is because some of our roads have actually evolved, so they haven't got those foundations of a modern road as well, so we have to be mindful of that when we're looking at them for the maintenance as well. So.
Yeah, and the issue about cyclists and active travel, it's one thing for us to recognise the importance of potholes for cars, but what about for cyclists on the rural roads, apart from anything else, and particularly in the dark?
When we undertake safety inspections, our inspectors are told to think and look at the uses of the road. So they are local people, they know the usage of those roads, so they are mindful that, again, like you said, for a car, this pothole wouldn't cause too much of an issue, but if somebody was on a bicycle, it is going to be a great thing. So they are mindful when they're assessing those defects out on the network.
So whether or not it might be that we have such an almost permanent state of degradation in some of our rural roads, it might be that we should consider a level of signage as a warning to cyclists to say, please be aware that the quality of the road may be degraded in parts. It's just really, it seems like we're doing what we can, but really cyclists are caught in the middle of all that, aren't they?
Yeah, so I think, I'm sure Chris can answer more on the technical part of it, but I think if we can put sign where we know that roads are not particularly good, there is signage on some roads. What I prefer than signing every road with a pothole is to try and get those potholes fixed. As Sian said, the inspectors go out They know what the usage is. So if there is a deep pothole that's going to uplift a cyclist, we would want to try and get that, whether it's on a rural road or on the main network. I think Chris's point is we are measuring all of these things. It is a finite budget that we got. We got a finite resource to do these fixes. We need to prioritise things. But where we know that there are issues on a NCN network, where we know that a road is utilised a lot by walkers for active travel, we will try and get in there sooner with a fix.
Thanks, Carl. It's recognising the realities of life in that regard, but not leaving it to cyclists to take undue risk without any warnings. I'm just saying maybe there is something we should think of there. And may I turn to Councillor maybe just on the third of those points, Councillor maybe, which is, or questions really, how do we marry up what might be most important for residents, but perception that it's least important, as it were, for the council?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The point you make, I don't disagree with. It's a point I make repeatedly, to be honest with you, in a number of different forums. When I first came into this role and gradually understood the situation with the condition of our infrastructure, I did ask officers who had long-term experience, why is it like this? And anecdotally, really, the response is it's been a long-term accumulation of the problem with limited public budgets and the very necessary emphasis on social services and education. And what we have as a result of that long-term accumulation, and I say long-term because I don't wish to make a political football out of it. I do welcome the opportunity to share this understanding across political parties and find a solution together. I honestly think that there's an impossibility presented to local government in terms of, maintenance is up to you, and if you have a backlog in maintenance, you somehow have to solve that. Actually, there's a need for a really massive investment in infrastructure across the whole of the UK. This is not a Monmouthshire only problem. We have a particular issue, as I think someone has already tried to explain, Suan, I think, tried to explain within the regional allocation of transport grants, in that one of the possible sources of funding towards resilient roads comes through that particular stream, and with that going regional, as one of the few counties with very long road networks within the Cardiff Capital Region, we are disadvantaged potentially because there's been a reallocation of funding to support rural regions, whereas we, as a rural county within the Cardiff Capital Region, are competing for funds in a different kind of way with the big cities, with Cardiff and Newport. So there's constant ups and downs around this, and I think Monmouthshire has a very particular issue there. I think the accumulation, I don't want to go on too long about it, the accumulation of problems with infrastructure obviously is further accentuated by the impacts of climate change and the floods that we've seen. And you start to feel you're getting on top of it, and then a whole new range of damage occurs. And then we do have this issue around, actually, it's not so much the weight of private vehicles, but the weight of and size of HGVs, which is a real mismatch with our rural towns, our rural roads, and indeed the bridges, as we're seeing increasingly. So there are some really wicked large-scale problems here, and they're not Monmouthshire alone that are struggling with it. All I can say is that I constantly do raise this when I have the opportunity, through regions, with the minister. I also raise it with our MP and have done with the previous MP. I will keep pushing. I think Welsh Government's local government borrowing initiative was a start, was an attempt to try and help in a way that they could see as sustainable in the long term, rather than saying, okay, here's another, what we need is 100 million for Monmouthshire. Thank you very much. We're not going to get it. and that's a start, and we need to see that building, but then supply chain issues come in. I'm sorry, I've talked far too long. I completely agree with you, Alistair, Councillor Neil. It's a really serious problem, and I am hugely grateful to our teams for how they manage to keep their heads above water, literally, in the way that they do, and managing to provide a really good service in spite of these difficulties that they're faced with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybe. And if I may, I just want to pick up before we finish on this item a couple of points that have been.
Sorry, Chair. If I
so, Councillor, yes.
We're coming with just a couple more questions as well.
Yeah, please.
Just sort of recurring potholes. In our ward, me and Tony joke about one in Old Market Street, and when it's going to reoccur, we're almost going to call it a name, sort of thing, you know. At what point does that get picked up? You know, we pretty much report it annually. Is there a point that it gets triggered for further investigated works on why that pothole is happening, you know? And the other point was, I see Graham on the line as well. Maybe you could answer on the change in highway code and the hierarchy. I'm not sure if it's coming under here, but there was on the presentation about pedestrian safety up there. And, you know, it's 2 years since that hierarchy came into effect. And I was on a different meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we were saying that maybe comms could come out a bit more with, you know, giving priority pedestrians on junctions and stuff like that, so that, you know, it's brought back into light. So I think people have not really aware, even though it's 2 years since the change of that highway code. Good.
I'm sure Graham has got a point on the second one. For the first one, and with Chris being new, what we've to the council, hit the floor running, has landed at the point where we're going straight into flood season and winter season. So yeah, as a welcome to Chris. But what we said with Steve is we will continue to fix these potholes on a temporary basis, but when they are continually coming out, we will go in and do an hot fix. Where there are many potholes in the same area, now we've been given a small capital budget for doing small work, so we will do a wider area now as part of the small scheme work. And obviously, if it's a much bigger area that is problematic, it then moves over to Siwan and the resurfacing. So yeah, if we're seeing a number of the similar complaints, I would hope that we've moved from the temporary fix into a more permanent hot fix. But if that is failing as well, there is obviously something else going on underneath the road that needs a bigger investigation. Yeah. Great.
And that gets picked up automatically by those reports, yeah.
Yes.
That data, historic data, shows that.
If it's coming through MCS, it gets picked up. If it's landing in, you know, to a certain point, if it's landing in our inbox, it gets.
Can you just talk to the microphone, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Some difficulty picking up.
Yeah. So if the complaints or the service requests come through MCS, they trigger a point where we've had the same area being picked up all the time, so that will trigger a different mechanism for fixing it. Obviously, if it's coming into my inbox or it's coming into other officers' inbox, which is not the best way to deal with it, but it becomes nuisance value that triggers in a different way. But the very best way to do it is through the My Council services.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to add to your 2,900 inbox at the moment. So.
Graham, did you want to come in, Graham?
Yeah, certainly. So in respect of the changes within the highway code and priority for pedestrians at junctions, the guidance has changed, and motorists should be giving way to pedestrians at junctions. Unfortunately, behaviour change in the eyes of the motorist is a notoriously difficult thing to completely achieve, and we see that through sort of compliance with speed limits and what have you. I am aware that the Welsh Government have recently sort of consulted on the introduction of simple zebra crossings at junctions. So these are just the black and white zebra markings on minor junctions without the additional infrastructure of zigzag markings and the Belisha beacons themselves. I imagine this will sort of come through now over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. And that's certainly something that we could potentially introduce to highlight the presence of pedestrians at junctions, at these minor junctions, and put into to the mind of the motorist that, you know, they certainly do have priority over vehicular traffic in those situations.
So, thanks, Graham. Yeah, I think it was the transport forum that I was on. That I think Nick Tulp did share similar sort of diagrams of those zebras, and they're fairly low cost. They're not the £30,000-40,000 that's normally. They're just painted lines on the road.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's just the black and white zebra carriageway markings that go from crossing point to crossing point, without the associated zigzags and Belisha beacons that you would normally see on a zebra crossing.
Okay, I'm going to just hold on that because, you know, we're really straying a little bit away from specifically about potholes and associated issues. But thank you for that. So overall, I think, you know, we've had some very important points and questions arising, and thank you for the presentation. And Carl, I know you said you'd share that, and in doing so, that, you know, we would want to, I'm sure, share that, for example, with community council members who've always got an interest, an active interest in this sort of thing, and more widely. So if that could be shared, that'd be really helpful indeed as a separate package. And I did want to pick up on the two questions that 2 points that have been put into the chat. The first one being that there will be on the 15th of December the meeting. I'm just looking for Hazel's. On the 15th of December, there'll be a public services scrutiny meeting, which will be tabling an update on the M48 Severn Bridge and HGVs from 11 a.m. onwards. All members are welcome and invited to attend, to note. And Councillor Buckler has framed a question that I think relates very much to some of the discussion we've had at the latter part of this section, and that is about those smaller rural roads where block drains, block culverts, block drains, ditches have a much greater impact, as there tends to be more extreme flooding potential from heavy rainfall. And I think it's very clear from all our experience that there is a much heavier reliance very often on single small track single lane roads leading to allowing people to actually exit their neighbourhoods down some of these rural lanes. So the question coming from Councillor Buckler is really to see whether we could have a review of how those locations are dealt with, and particularly the ones that are frequent problems. Should we just take a different view to the urgency of dealing with those particularly rural roads? You know, and as I say, there will be some that are frequent problems that we might be able to identify.
Yeah, and apologies, I didn't see the chat. So, to Councillor Buckler, yes, over the last 2 to 3 years, as we become aware, you know, we know when the rains are coming. We don't always know where they're going to land. We don't always know the extent that they're coming in, but we are pre-warned that heavy rain is due. We usually have 2 or 3 days prior to that. We are getting much better at sending teams out to where we know we have issues with culverts and trash screens and other flooding assets. So that is a piece of work that I think we're always going to learn from. Certainly weren't expecting the level of flooding in Abergavenny and Monmouth this time, but they are lessons that we will learn around the trash screens, around the smaller rivers and smaller brooks that react quicker than the main rivers. So it is a constant learning thing, but we have done a lot of that over the last 2 to 3 years. So we now have a very long list when we know that rain is coming, and teams from both highways and grounds go out and clear culverts and ditches, drainage accordingly. But I am sure as more rain falls in different areas, that local knowledge is what we need shared with us as much as anything else, of the local parts that flood and react quickly under rainfall.
So the list of those locations, is that something you're in a position to be able to share more widely so that we understand whether, as councillors, we might be able to assist in saying this is less and this is more urgent?
And I think we've probably got about 100, 120 on the list. I'm happy to share that list out. Some of those, it is important to remember, some of these are riparian ownership drainage issues. We always want to support, we always want to help. If whatever the issue is, if water's being pushed onto the highway, we want to try and stop it. But it's not always our responsibility as a council to resolve that issue. But where we know where they are, we'll work with the landowners and try and get it resolved before we're back in another storm condition.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So we're going to move on, and first of all say thank you for the presentation and the responses to the questions. It's been very helpful. There are a couple of follow-up things, one of them being the list that we just talked about, but also the presentation itself that we'd be able to share. And I think the more we are well informed, the more we can share that information to the broadest number of people within the county. We're all trying to do the best job we can, and I know that the team, you yourselves, are doing that very thing. So thank you for that, and I'm going to move on to our item number 5 on the agenda. And thank you, Carl. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Graham, and thank you, Chris, and welcome, by the way. The weather does get quite nice here in Monmouthshire, by the way, Chris.
Yeah, I've had a couple of nice days, but there's been a couple of rotten ones as well.
That's it. You just picked the wrong time. But anyway, really good to see you there. Thank you. So we're going to move through items 5 and 6. These are additional business items, and they are there for council members to raise questions with Robert McGowan, who's sitting alongside me, who will ensure that any questions you have are responded to by the service and shared back to the committee. And this being a special meeting, we don't have the normal forward plan and so on to run through, but really just to remind you that the next meeting is on the 27th of January, which is also a special meeting at 2 p.m. and 10th February at 10 a.m. Wow, we're already talking about into the second month of 2026. My goodness. Robert, you want us to come in?
Yes. To you as well, but you might like to read to the members, but perhaps while I mention something.
Do you want to read it out while I'm just...
I was just going to add, just because we don't have the forward work programme discussion, wanted to remind everyone once again that you should expect an invitation to People Scrutiny on the 21st of January as well for a number of education items that are going to be on that agenda, so they're very much relevant to this committee as well. So just to remember to look out for that on the 21st of January.
I can't see any message.
Okay,
So we're just looking for a message that we've...
Okay, I'll read it, if that's right.
Robert's got it. Okay.
Yeah, so because this is a special meeting and so is the next one, we don't have the usual full agenda with the forward planners, etc. We just wanted to remind members that you can view the council and cabinet planner for items being added separately to them being on the meeting agendas. So we sort of thought this was a good time to point this out. Because we've got this big gap in meetings and in regular agendas. So that's on the Democratic Services page on the Council Hub. If you go into there, you find the planner. So that you can check it yourselves effectively. That's what I'm trying to say, just to keep up to date with that, as it won't be on our agendas any time immediately soon. And also, it was just to let everyone know that at the last Scrutiny Chairs meeting, it was agreed that the draft budget proposals will come through just to this committee rather than going round the 4 committees. But the invitation would be open then to all members to attend for that particular meeting, Chair, if that's just reminding everyone about that as well.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you, Robert. So it just remains to say thanks for the meeting. I'm going to close it now, and I think many of us as councillors, if not all of us, will be seeing each other tomorrow. But Claire, if we don't see you before Christmas, a very Merry Christmas to you and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
Cheerio for now. I'm calling the meeting closed.
Thank you, Chair.
Favorite topic, other than